All right, welcome back to the House Environment Committee. We are shifting topics to S212, an act relating to potable water supply and wastewater system connections, and looking at an amendment brought to us by the city of Burlington that Michael has done some work on for us. Welcome.
Good afternoon. This is Michael Grady. I have a PowerPoint for you, but unfortunately I left my iPad at home. I tried to use the loaner iPad that IT has, but it tells me I'm unauthorized to use the system. So I'm going to ask Kat to advance the slides as we go through. I apologize for that inconvenience. So I'm going to stand up because some of the text is pretty small. So I'm going to talk to you about pre-treatment permitting. First thing I think you should know in the next slide is what is pre-treatment? So this is the EPA definition. It's the reduction of the amount of pollutants, the elimination of pollutants, or the alteration, the nature of a pollutant in a wastewater prior to it going into a POTW. POTW is a publicly owned treatment works. It's basically really any system, piping, etc., used to process and then discharge municipal sewage or industrial waste. Pre-treatment is generally only required for non-domestic sewage. So that's something to remember. Pre-treatment is for non-domestic sewage. And there are great examples of what needs pre-treatment. Breweries need pre-treatment because the organic matter in discharge can the BOD levels at a wastewater treatment plant and literally blow up wastewater treatment plants. Cheese making, industrial processing, they all need pre-treatment. So that user of the system has to implement some sort of treatment process at their facility before that wastewater is allowed to go into the publicly owned treatment work.
Is that
Representative Austin.
is agriculture?
Food processing
Yeah.
is, but and CAFOs can be, but just general agriculture is no.
No, CAFOs. It's a-
CAFOs can be.
It's the Coventry landfill, also pre-treatment to get the leachate out.
I mean, what they are doing is pre-treatment. But whether or not a landfill is subject, I probably is because that's probably characterized as industrial discharge. So it probably is required to do some form of it, yeah. So EPA has a national pre-treatment program, and it's kind of unique in that it is a three-tiered system. It's got federal provisions, it's got state provisions, it's got local provisions. And depending on what jurisdiction you're in, it can be federal, state, or local implementation and enforcement. And that's how a lot of jurisdictions do it. They have their local municipal public water systems, wastewater systems run their pre-treatment program. So it's not unusual for Burlington or whomever else to ask for the ability to run their own pre-treatment program. Not unusual, pretty common.
Which is the amendment we're considering.
But yeah, we're gonna get to why.
Just wanted to orient people that that's why we're talking about.
And so, could you go to the next? So these are all of the state and territory pre-treatment programs that EPA has authorized, and as you can see, it's pretty much every state. But when I was looking at this, I'm like, why is there an asterisk after Alabama and Connecticut and Mississippi and Nebraska and Vermont? Well, you go over here and it says it denotes state implementation in accordance with 40 CFR 403.10E. which says development and submission of NIPT state pre-treatment programs. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a problem. Because the state runs its NIPTs program under an agreement. And so I'm like, oh my, there must be something else. And so could you go? And so this is what the something else is. A state with an approved pretreatment program may assume responsibility for implementing the POTW pretreatment program in lieu of requiring the POTW to develop it. So that means the state is doing it instead of the municipal public wastewater system. And so there still needs to be more. I'm like, there's gotta be more, there's gotta be more. And so this is what they're supposed to be implementing. And I'm not gonna go through this one. The next one is the one that I wanna really look at. This is what you need to do if you're gonna be Nebraska, Mississippi, Alabama, or Vermont, or Connecticut. You need to show that you have all of these things. Now, one of the things that you need to show is you have the legal authority to enforce all of your pre-treatment. You have the ability to require individual contributors to get a permit or to do filtration. You have the ability to require compliance with pre-treatment standards. You're running the program. This isn't like those municipalities that have been delegated it from their states. This is a requirement that you run the program, that the state run the program. Could you go to the next one? And there's actually a MOU between EPA and ANR that says the state has the primary responsibility for enforcing the discharges prohibited by 40 CFR 403.5, which is pre-treatment, applying or enforcing or any national pre-treatment standards. Pre-treatment. So in order to do the little asterisks, you needed to have all that authority, which included authority to enforce and inspect and permit. This MOU recognizes that Vermont ANR has that primary responsibility. And could you go to the next? And the state shall carry out inspection, surveillance, and monitoring procedures and will determine independent information supplied by the industrial user. They're interacting, or they're supposed to be interacting directly with the industrial user. Can you go to the next one? But it also says that state and local pre-treatment, that a local entity can have its own pre-treatment standards. And so this makes sense in Vermont. Burlington has pre-treatment standards. Middlebury has pre-treatment standards. They're doing pre-treatment provisions underneath their state and local ability. But the state is supposed to be running the entire pre-treatment program underneath that MOU and underneath the ASTRA. So this is what Burlington has proposed. And it says a lot that it doesn't need to say, but what it says is that the public owner of the publicly owned treatment works in order, which is duplicative. You can't have a publicly owned treatment works that's not owned by a public owner. So the public owner shall have the authority to set its own application and other fees. That's permitting. In addition, they will have the ability to seek civil, criminal, and administrative penalties. That's enforcement. And they will have the ability to require compliance with 40 CFR 403, which is pre-treatment. So they're looking for enforcement, permitting, and effectively inspection and implementation, which other states give their localities, but not, I don't know if the asterisk controls. I don't know if ANR can delegate that primary or sole pre-treatment permitting, inspection, and enforcement to a municipality when the 40310E, the asterisk memorandum, provides that the state has primary responsibility. I think EPA will say you're not supposed to, but we're going to write a new agreement. And I think that will probably be enough.
Well, wait a minute. So where did the original agreement come from? What, that makes it sort of sound fishy, but the original container that we're in was an agreement with EPA, wasn't it?
Yes, and you have to apply for 403.10E. It's something that the state seeks.
Is it part of our larger delegation authority?
Yes, it is part of NIPD's discharge.
And then how does this, if we did get an exception for pretreatment, how would that affect our other?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think it would. I think you'd probably revise the pretreatment delegation to say that it's going to be consistent with EPA authority that's not in 403.10. There's all this other, there's pages of how you run a pretreatment program. And I think that that's what they would do. They would say that it's not subject to 403.10 anymore. It's subject to 403 at large. Then A&R could delegate to their pretreatment to a municipality. But big question, the small answer is I don't really know. It's kind of hard to navigate 40 CFR Part 403 and all of the pretreatment requirements. And the delegation MOU is from 1982. The original NIPD's delegation is from 1974. I mean, the intent and how it's been applied could be very different. So I asked A&R to contact EPA to get clarity on whether or not A&R can delegate or if they're going to need a revision to their MOU. And so, Kat, could you put the second doc I sent up?
Which one? Oh, the amendment?
Yeah.
Did you find out what the other states with asterisks are doing? Have they gone to any kind of pretreatment delegation?
I did not look into that. I did look for MOUs between, I figured Nebraska would be easy to find. They actually have a really good government website, but I couldn't find anything. So what I did is I rewrote Burlington's language. But it does the same thing. It says the secretary may delegate or enter a memorandum of understanding. And if you could scroll down a little bit, Kat, that'd be great. And the memorandum shall authorize the owner of a POTW to regulate and enforce pretreatment discharges to the POTW consistent with the federal authority to do so. It includes applicable civil, criminal, or administrative penalty. You can go to jail for violation of the Clean Water Act. Just so you know, in case you're contemplating violating. And the owner of the POTW may, as part of the agreement, set application fees and other fees necessary. And then I added the definitions of the applicable terms. These are not in statute anywhere, in Vermont statute, so it's good to have this clarity. I do cross-reference back to federal law, which is a little bit of a danger in this federal era, but these programs haven't changed in decades, and I don't think they will. And the actual definitions are kind of really technical. So I didn't feel the drive to, I didn't feel the fear of the federal change to these programs, and I didn't think it was necessary to the actual text and statute. So it does what Burlington wants, but what it also doesn't, and Kat, could you scroll to the end? It has a contingent effective date. So this isn't going to be authorized until EPA informs ANR that it is. And could you scroll down a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more? There's a lot of stuff that's not changing. It's just that the subsection designations are changing. So there it is. So Section X, municipal pretreatment authority takes effect upon US EPA notifying ANR that ANR is authorized to delegate pretreatment to municipalities under that MOU from 1982. Does what Burlington wants, covers the contingency of maybe ANR doesn't have the authority. EPA just needs to inform them that they do, and then ANR can delegate to Burlington or any other town that's willing to enter into that MOU agreement. So I think this does everything that you'd want it to do, or what Burlington wanted to do, but it also is legally safe.
Your chance we'll hear back from them before we pass the bill.
I can check in with ANR again. The person that runs the pretreatment program said that they contacted EPA, I think on Friday.
Yeah, remind me of her name.
Heather Collins, I believe.
Representative Hoyt.
Yeah, you mentioned this is what Burlington wants. What and why exactly? They feel like the state's.
Well, part of it is they already run a pretreatment program,
Okay.
right? And think about it, if you own a wastewater treatment plant, you want to be the one that's controlling what's coming into your wastewater treatment plant. So you know you have capacity, know what kind of chemicals are coming into your plant, know what has to be done for treatment outside of the plant. I mean, the breweries is not a fantastical example. It has happened in Vermont where breweries were discharging without doing pretreatment, and it created problems in these facilities. Not to the point that anything exploded, but it could have.
So it's just more oversight for them.
Well, it's also taking away a duplicative permitting aspect,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Because if you run your own and there's a state program as well, you know, technically you're supposed to get both local approval and state approval.
Gotcha.
And so it could be administratively more efficient to do it this way. And it's how a lot of jurisdictions deal with POTW requirements.
Gotcha. Thanks.
When we were speaking with you, your concern was that there's a potential loophole that if we enable this without this tech.
My concern is if you do this and authorities delegated to a municipality and they start saying, this is what the facility needs to do for pretreatment, somebody that opposes that could sue and say that they were violating their Clean Water Act authority. You could also have a situation where the user themselves would say, you don't have pretreatment authority.
That was the example I was thinking of.
Pardon?
That was the one that I remembered you bringing up. But so the first one that you just said, you're saying some other person in the city could sue and say you don't have this authority.
I remember Clean Water Act has citizen suit authority. So anyone that has standing is pretty much going to be anybody that uses that wastewater treatment facility could say that the city shouldn't be permitting or shouldn't be doing the pretreatment permitting, or that even if the city is doing the pretreatment permitting, that ANR has to permit it as well, because they didn't have approval under this MOU. So I would talk to A&R, I would talk to them about how they're interpreting that MOU, whether or not they see any limitations of that MOU, what they've heard from EPA. And then again, I like the idea of local pretreatment programs because they're really invested in their plants, and so they make sure that what is done is necessary and complies with the law. I just really don't know what that limit is on that MOU.
Representative Logan.
Thank you. So this contingent effective date. Could it not, so let's assume that the state doesn't have the authority to delegate to municipalities this permitting pretreatment authority under that
Right.
memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement, an MOA.
Yeah,
Could the contingency language also include something like for some other agreement?
so I wrote it is authorized to delegate. Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah.
I see your, that could be done.
Sorry, what was your?
That if that memorandum of agreement from 1982 does in fact not allow the state to delegate authority to a municipality, then they would have to make a new agreement, and so the language would have to also reference the potential
Got
new
it.
agreement.
Yeah, I would say under this MOU or other agreement between EPA and A.
Further questions? Representative Austin.
I'm just wondering if Burlington specifically would need an exemption during weather events, because there's been several times where not pre-treated water went into Lake Champlain because the system couldn't handle it. And I wonder if this would be a place where there could be an exemption in case of a weather event.
So technically, those are combined sewer overflows, and technically they're authorized underneath the permit for that facility, subject to a schedule of compliance that the facility needs to meet in order to eliminate those combined sewer overflows. So I mean, combined sewer overflows were engineered by the Romans, like literally the Romans were the ones that designed those to reduce the pressure. Because when you have too much flow, too much volume in a system, the pressure just destroys the system. So you have to release the pressure. And the Romans figured out how to do it. And literally that's what a CSO is. But the state has been, for a while now, has a rule that requires those treatment facilities that have CSOs to eliminate them. It's on a schedule because eliminating them is very expensive. And often the facility wants to do it in conjunction with other upgrades, which makes sense from a cost and a implementation perspective. And so I don't know where Burlington is on its schedule. Other jurisdictions are doing pretty well. Rutland is really moving towards it. They want to get rid of theirs, and they've reduced the number of theirs pretty significantly. I don't know where Burlington is on their schedule.
Hey, did Burlington just pass a big bond for upgrading the wastewater? Yeah, so maybe it's not.
Sakowitz.
To Representative Logan's point about having a superseding agreement that you referred to as an other agreement, like if that was in statute, how would that be kept track of?
Contingent effective dates always have that kind of question, like, uh, I can write into it. Or other agreement between US CPA and ANR upon that such an agreement, ANR shall submit notice to the clerk of the House and the Senate Secretary. That's how we've done it before.
So someone reading the statute in some time in the future and comes across that language, how would they know where to find that agreement? How would they know what to look for or?
So this is session law, so it won't be codified as statute, but it will be a note in the statute. And what happens is, so our publisher hates these because there's no certainty, just the exact question you're asking. So every time we do a revision, and I have to do Title 10 this summer, God thank me. And they will ask, has this contingency been met? Has it been met? And then if it has, we write into the note on, June 10th, ANR submitted to General Assembly documentation of approval to delegation. That's what we would do.
The way you have this drafted, the section Y, that's just a placeholder.
Yeah, I didn't
Okay.
presume you wanted it inserted in 212 and yet. This is just the language.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused. That session law, why it's coming after a statute with the CAFO permit stuff in it. Why'd you insert all those sections?
Yeah, and honestly, one of the things, I follow what Burlington has sent over and they put the new language as new sub B, which requires relettering of all the subsequent subsections. You could just take the new language and make it the last subsection. And it would shorten that language significantly. And then you wouldn't have things like CAFO or.
That would be a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Further questions, Representative North?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Michael, this has been asked for by Burlington. There isn't anything specific about Burlington in here, so it would apply to any wastewater.
Right, it applies if it would have.
But how do we make sure that other folks looked at it?
I don't know if other folks have looked at it. I know A&R supports the concept and probably supports it for more than just Burlington.
I guess I'm curious what other towns are doing, like my town with, I think that they don't have a permit, but they have agreements with people who come into the industrial park for pre-treatment. But I'm gonna find out. So I'm curious.
I mean, that's one way to do it because you have to determine like what you're gonna allow to be discharged and not just what, but how much and when. Because when is also a big driving factor. Like maybe in the summer it's better for you. Maybe you hold your waste in summer it's better, and maybe late at night is better.
Some of the waste, as you say, is like not even, it needs to go somewhere else. For a while, I don't know what's happening now, but when Otter Creek Brewing was there, they had a bread company taking their mash and bread. Kind of cool.
But any facility that's a POTW and that needs to be state or municipally owned, so it's not private entities, they would be the ones that, and if they also hit the other criteria for a POTW pretreatment program, that, as I said, there's an entire part of Title 40 CFR that just deals with pretreatment.
And then is it an opt-in thing for them or could They just leave the permitting with the state or?
Yeah, I mean, they have to enter an MOU, so there has to be willingness on both sides.
Between the PFTW and the state.
Mhm.
Any other questions on this or the underlying S212 for Michael?
I have tried to get, I have been in contact with ANR, and Brian Redmond, the head of the division, has been responsive, but there was concern about the general permitting, the second subdivision of it being too broad, the low impact, et cetera, language. Trying to get on the same page with him about how to refine that so it doesn't raise the same concerns. I haven't done that yet. I just emailed with him maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago, so.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Members, our next witnesses are scheduled for 3, so